escape the clutches of a maximum security corporate system to the open source community. Today, still wanted by the state, they broadcast as soldiers of freedom. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, if you can find them, maybe you can hire the Dark City Radio crew.
Good evening, Dark City. Well, tonight we're going to blur the lines of fantasy and fact. What you think is real may be fiction, what you think is fiction may very well be true. And I think it's fair to say all stories you were told contain a little bit of fact and a little bit of fiction. Of course, this is very much dependent on which angle you slice your reality at. So I'd like to introduce a man who is quite well aware and he's got conscious awareness of that fact. It's fact-based fiction author A.K. Kuykendall. Hi A.K., welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being here. I hope you're well this evening.
No, you as well.
Yeah. Right, well, I think first of all we'll have a little chat about your background and how you got into writing, and then move on and have a chat about your current book and some of your other works. So I don't know if you want to just tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I was first my name is A.K. Kuykendall. That's the nom de plume that I write under. Pretty much I've been writing since I was 10 years old. Short stories, poetry, all that other type of jazz. I've been in the arts all my life. I just knew that I wanted to be a storyteller. So I was pretty much just practicing being as persistent as I possibly could at trying to forge this. And I kept telling myself every day as I wrote a word a day, no matter how many words I wrote a day, I would write a day. And I would tell myself that you never know when a story idea is going to turn into $1 million. At this point in my career, I'm close to that $1 million than I've ever been before, and I'm ecstatic. So I had humble beginnings as a writer, and now my efforts have been paying off with 5 consecutive contracts now. And my fifth contract is a 4-book deal for the Conspiracy Odyssey series based on the strength and the popularity of book 1. And now that I'm on the first book of the new 4-book deal, 4-book contract, Origins has been completed as of the 30th of October, one day before Halloween, and now I'm sitting in front of that.
Well, thanks for being here. And I do believe you use a typewriter, don't you?
I do use a typewriter. It's an antique typewriter that was actually given to me by my then girlfriend, which is now my wife and the mother of both my children, L. Kuykendall. Give a shout out to her. I love her a great deal. I do use a typewriter. I use modern technology as well. But the typewriter, I always traditionally write out my first chapter on the typewriter before
yeah, I think that there's something quite, I don't know, I had a typewriter as a child in a little case, then I absolutely loved it. And I think that stemmed from seeing my mum, she wasn't a writer, she was a secretary, but she'd got one of the very old typewriters, with the big handle on to press return. And there's just something quite iconic about them, isn't there?
Oh, of course. I mean, I look at it as being more majestic than anything else. And I know that might sound weird to yourselves as well as your audience. But I consider it just completely majestic. It feels like I'm in that old time Edgar Allan Poe feel of writing in a dark cavern-like room where there's nothing but you and your thoughts. There's not this modern day technology that invades you, like you're getting messages through your computer while you're trying to bang out your story and hit your deadlines. It's pretty much raw, even to the antique carrying case that I have my Universal Underwood in. it smells even antique. I don't know if antique is a smell, but that's how I look at it. It's just like when I go into a public library, which I love libraries, all kinds of libraries, from the smallest to the biggest, the filthy ones to the cleanest ones. I like opening up the book and smelling Nyrees for some reason. It's the same thing with my typewriter. It's all of it is just majestic to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean, actually. I'm the same as that with books. I think the oldest book I've got is from around the beginning of the 1900s. And I don't know, so it's properly bound and everything. And, yeah, they do have a certain smell.
Oh, yes, the casing and everything. And I take care of it. I even like the chips and the dents and the cracks in the casing. I love it all. And even when I take my boys to the pool, because I have deadlines to hit, so I got to keep working at certain times. But you can't ignore your children. I got this new contract when I was during the summer, right before the summer hit. You know, lucky me. But I still had obligations to have fun with the children and get them out for the summer while I was in the process of hitting my deadline. So when I took them to the pool, I would take my Underwood typewriter with me to the poolside and type while they were out there playing in the water. That it was weird. So then you have to have these weird, mundane conversations with every walkabout that comes around. Oh, that's nice. You're a typewriter. Oh, you're a writer. Okay, first off, you want to just tell them I have a deadline. Leave me alone. But of course, you don't want to do that because that's being rude in our society. So pretty much, if I'm not alone in a dark room, it's just not magic for me. But I digress.
Yeah, well, no, it's an interesting subject. In fact, when I read that, as you know, we were saying, some of your stories sort of touch on a horror kind of theme, and it made me think of Misery, the Stephen King story with the writer in that. And I think some of the lines in that were particularly good. You know, he talks about putting the pristine piece of paper in, and I think you kind of stamp out your intent more in a way with a typewriter than you can do on a computer.
Exactly, but this is where it gets a little bit tricky. For me, like I said, my girlfriend, my first birthday after meeting her, my first birthday months later after meeting her, she actually, based on what she knew of what I was writing
Oh, you've got sorry, AK, you've gone quite quiet there.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's a little bit better. You're still quite quiet though.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Just let me know because I don't want your audience or yourself to miss what I'm saying. But I was trying to tell you about my typewriter. My typewriter actually has a name. My typewriter is actually the main character in Writer's Block. First word in the right now. Not many people knew that if they didn't read the book. But because the story is about an author. His name is Gregory Stillingsworth, and he has a beautiful wife named Jamie Stillingsworth. But Buford was given to him when he was only 14 years old. And that's what my typewriter's name. My typewriter's name is Buford. Craziest thing, because my now wife had it engraved with the name Buford on it. It's like in the novel.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. You see, it's kind of, that's the fact and the fiction weaving together right there, isn't it, really?
Yes, a little bit, but it mostly deals with more, I consider the fact-based fiction part of it more of the biblical side, because it's a hard story about an author, and it's, because basically, you know how all religions have a scribe that tells the story, you know, the book of Job, Christian text, you know, Muslims, you know, whatever. Everybody has their own, a scribe wrote the Bible, you know, multiple scribes wrote the Bible and whatever. Mm-hmm. Basically, what Gregory Stillingsworth is that he doesn't know yet is that he's a scribe that is writing Lucifer into existence. But he knows it, but he doesn't know it. He has four like a thing he doesn't know it. But the main character in all my work is actually female. Even if I have to develop that character slowly, my main characters have always been female. And what happens is that later on in the trilogy, Jamie will
rise to be the most powerful in existence. It had something to do with history. Like my story ever since.
Sorry, your sound was going a little bit in and out again there, I'm afraid.
Hear me now?
Yeah, I can. You're still quite quiet, but yeah, I can hear you more clearly.
Okay. But I hope you caught that about the story of Doubtless and how Jamie's actually the sine qua non of the trilogy. She's the most powerful. She's one of the most powerful witches in existence. But that came about through history. Happened through history. That's how she's the most powerful witch. She became the most powerful because of Lucifer himself. He's trying to use her to bring that iniquity into existence.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say, you have a lot of you put the females in the forefront there. Yeah, Bob's just saying on the text that your audio is quite in and out, AK. I don't know if you can I think he's saying you need to stop moving. I don't know.
All right. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's much clearer.
I was trying to touch the microphone. I keep getting closer and touching the microphone, so I do apologize to you guys and the audience.
Yeah, that's fantastic now. If you can keep it like that, if you can, that'd be fabulous.
All right.
Excellent. Okay. There's a couple of subjects really. You can split off on that one. But yeah, it is interesting because, a great many books, especially I've read quite a lot of horror myself, that I was really big on that genre. It is predominantly generally a male lead character.
Yes, it is. I try to do something. I didn't do it out of some kind of weird need to make sense of the universe, but in a sense, like I said, I write. My website is the site affectionately known as the site where truth reads through fiction. But I also, because my mother is not only my mother and I love her to death, she's also my best friend. And she is what motivated me to write and bring into existence strong protagonists, which are female. Because through history, we men have, we have the audacity to consider the world a man's world, which makes no sense. How can it be a man without the woman? So, in my own way of protest, I'm giving voice to the strength of women in my own vague and mundane way. And I know I'm not doing it too much justice, but I just don't want to. I want to be a different artist in a sense. I speak through my work, whether I'm telling truths or I'm protesting. I'm always doing something in my work, and it's up to fans of mine to realize the difference in what I'm doing or to decipher what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting actually, because when you talk about the Bible and females were kind of pretty much written out of the Bible.
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah. And I mean, even the sort of, there were no predominant female characters. Even the, Mary was kind of not really mentioned, considering she supposedly gave birth to Jesus, Yeah.
Supposedly gave birth, or actually from my research, gave birth to two children. Two children from Jesus, and the bloodline lives on to this day. But that's all, hyperbole according to theologians and historians. So I really don't go there too much. But nothing can stop me from placing that father into my work. That's my way of speaking truth to power.
So what's generally your starting point then? Is it sort of conspiracy theories you hear and then you go on to do the research for the facts?
What in a sense, my starting point is what in history has baffled people. What are the holes in our history that's never been filled in before, or never have been satisfactorily filled in? Things that our government our world governments, life itself has thrown at us, and it's forced us to swallow. It just doesn't sit well with me. So basically, when I'm in the process of researching, and my money is not as strong as I want it to be at this point, so my travels are limited when it comes down to researching and interviews and things like that. So I discover them through libraries, online, as well as just a little bit of travel. But I always come up with the material, and plus I have a primary a secret source that I can't divulge the name of. I can't even tell you if it's a he, she, or an it. Out of safety for he, she, or it, and myself and my family, with the content that I write about. But I always consider myself, in order to protect my life and the lives of my family, I present the totality of what I've discovered through my research. Fact seamlessly rolled into fiction. So basically, when the powers that be believes me to be full of BS, that's when I'm covertly distributing truths to the populace.
Well, I think in some ways it's more of an effective medium, because I think, when things are presented in that way, often people are more likely to take them on board than if, quite shocking facts or facts that are the opposite of what was always generally believed are presented. People are more likely to reject them. Whereas
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just expanding on that really, and thinking, it's similar to a lot of these big budget movies today, isn't it? There's, as we were saying before we came on, in most stories, in fact, there's always that element of truth that runs through them, and I think that's perhaps what kind of grasps people on a basic level to be drawn into a story.
Well, I can say that Arthur, if you're familiar with Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, he was best known for his book, The World, Its Will and Representation. Mm-hmm. He wrote that he had a claim that the world is driven by a continually dissatisfied will, continually seeking satisfaction. I'm taken back, 4 or 5 steps by that claim, because and which I wholly buy into, because I find myself in line with Schopenhauer's claim, for I am very much driven by a dissatisfied will that seeks satisfaction. And when I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I can't help but to think that I can't be the only one that thinks this way. And therein lies the motivation for me to put ink to paper and to disseminate or to distribute my writings. Because whether it's in line with some of the great writers or what we proclaim to be the great writers out there, if the writing and the prose is not that sharp, whether it's a linear or non-linear approach to writing, I'm still getting these thoughts out of my head, and I know people are of like mind out there that we deem, and publishers deem, and the marketing companies out there deem fans, that buy into my philosophy in a sense. They have to be just as much as I am, and that's basically dissatisfied. So basically, but he wrote something in 1818 that most people get wrong. He said all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, is it accepted as being self-evident. But he pretty much did not say that at all. People just twisted that up in history. Basically what he said was, to truth, only a brief celebration of victory is allowed between the two long periods during which it is condemned as paradoxical or disparaged as trivial. So no matter what my research, the truths I find in my research is exposed, people are still going to consider my work trivial until they do the research for themselves. So basically, I'm not only entertaining, but I'm educating at the same time. If you are a true truth seeker, you will research further for your own self-worth. But if you're not a true truth seeker, at least you'll enjoy a pretty good story.
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic when a book can do that. You know, you sort of reading through it and reading through the story, and then it sends you off on a completely different train of thought that you suddenly need to go away and look something up. In fact, I one of the authors I read a lot of at the moment is Murakami. He's a Japanese author. I don't know if you know him.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. So it's quite a lot of existential stuff, really. It's you know, his books are based around kind of concepts, really, purgatory and, you know, that kind of thing. And yeah, his books are very much like that. You know, they're made because there's a lot of Japanese history in there as well. So I've learnt a great deal about Japan through reading them as well. And in fact, food, interestingly, because that was, we didn't really mention, but you are actually an executive chef, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm a corporate chef.
A corporate chef.
I'm not working, you know, thoroughly as an executive chef, but I'm working as a corporate chef now. Venues I can't mention because, of course, according to standard operating procedures of the organizations that I'm working for, basically don't want to be mentioned in this. They call it my hobby. They don't realize this is what I want to do for a living.
Yeah. Yeah.
If anything, I hope they're not listening, but if anything, what I do for them is a hobby. I love food, but I would rather reduce that food, my love of food, down to dinner parties, making my wife and our friends smile. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. Murakami writes a lot about food. That's what made me think of the connection, because I've also learnt a lot about Japanese food from reading his books. You see, it's amazing, a whole education, regardless of all the whole other entertainment side of it. Do you think you'd ever write about food?
Have I ever wrote about food?
Would you put it in the books? I mean, you know, in terms of when I'm reading Murakami, there's this whole kind of crazy stuff going on in other worlds and other dimensions, and then someone just stops and he describes cooking a meal in real detail enough to make you hungry, you know?
Well, in my, you know how, you ever heard of the phrase, art imitates life?
Yes.
Usually when an author writes, they are putting themselves into their work fully. I'm what you call an amalgamation of both my characters, Gregory Stillingsworth and Jamie Stillingsworth, in my horror concept trilogy known as Writer's Block Trilogy. And in the possession, you see, this is how weird it is. I'm a chef that longs to be a writer. He's a writer. Gregory Stillingsworth, my character Gregory Stillingsworth, he's a writer, but he can cook like a world-class chef. And I describe a lot of food, more of food that has the erogenous edges to it, which he uses to spice up his and Jamie's, you know, marriage, you know, love life. Mm-hmm. But we talk about, you know, a lot of different types of food. I try to make people salivate, even to the point where I've gotten, it's a horror story, it's a good horror story, I get rave reviews on it, but some very technical reviewers would tell me things like, you know, I don't really need to know the full detail of the meal. Just say they ate some salmon. But that's not how I write. I like to be descriptive, especially with food, which I love a great deal. I'm going to talk about food because it's part of me as the writer portraying this story in ink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you talked about food, yes, in a sense, yes. If you ever get a chance to get around, you know, to tickling your fancy with my horror concept and telling me what you think about my horror concept, because you had a love of horror when you were younger, and of course now too, just like I was when I was younger to today. But I do know, I'm sure you feel the same way, that horror movies and horror stories are not as good as they were back then.
No, I think so. Well, it's very much that, you know, these days it's a lot about the sensation and the kind of the gore and the shock value. So they are horror films in the sense of people are horrified by them, but it's kind of, there's not that level of storytelling, and we were talking a little bit earlier, weren't we, before we came on, about how some of it, I know you were saying you're a fan of the Twilight Zone, as was I.
The Twilight Zone, yes. Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, The War of the Worlds, the whole spiel. I grew up with that stuff, these stories. Talking Tina. You know the Twilight Zone's, the episode about Talking Tina, the doll? Scared the crap out of me. The doll didn't do nothing because they didn't have no graphics back then, but it still scared the crap out of me. And would you believe that a doll is also a character in writer's block? It's crazy. It's really crazy how life really imitates my art, because all the things that really frighten me, I start talking about it. Dolls have always frightened me. And can you believe it? It makes a guest appearance in my work, but I won't tell you anymore. I don't want to spoil it for you. but given what you said about it's all about shock value and gore and all this other kind of crap, I fully concur with you, because some of my reviews for Writer's Block tell me that it started off slow, but ended with a bang. That's because I want to build the characters. I want to build the scary. I want to build the momentum towards the scares. You want to create the atmosphere as a writer. You don't want to just throw everything at them at one time and that's it. So I start off really deep with about many different elements that go back in history, and then I walk you through the love of a couple, the Stillingsworths, how much they love each other, how he was a struggling writer at first, and then he became, he had a deal from a publishing house. His career took off ever since. How he and her met in college, and then he had a handwritten novel, his first novel that he wrote at the age of 7, called Ambivalence, and he wrote that at the age of 7, and it was flawlessly written. Even though it was in handwriting, it was flawlessly punctuated, flawlessly written, everything before it was typed up and published. And it was probably his like 7th or 8th or 10th book published. It wasn't his first book published. So I really get very, very great film.
Yeah, well, I think it's, most horror books that are written well do have that development of character and that real, it's bringing the character alive, isn't it?
Especially when it's a trilogy. I can't just throw everything at them.
Yeah, so it's got to have that kind of that connection that runs all the way through. I think that's why sometimes it's difficult to translate good horror stories into films.
Exactly. They don't ever give the movies can never do a novel justice. They never do. Some of the ones that I think that got it pretty good was Stephen King's The Shining.
Yeah.
Recently, The Mist.
Yeah. Well, you've gone a little bit quiet again there.
I'm sorry about that. My children are doing something real quick.
Oh, I know how that one goes. That usually happens to me when I'm on.
Sorry for getting quiet on you.
That's okay. That's okay.
Gotta get nestled in. But like I said, like Stephen King did it right, with The Shining, and I think Misery. Stephen King's he's had years to perfect the way he because he presents his stories on film, and he's not the director, and some of the times he's not even the writer. Someone else adapts his work for him, but he's always, and I stress this, he's always been a creative consultant on the sets of the things that have been made of his short stories and his novels. And that's what made the difference between his movies and other movies that are just bought. The film rights and television rights are just bought from the author through their agent, and then they take it and they do whatever they want with it. The director does whatever they want with it, and that's what messes everything up, because the director might have interpreted the story completely backwards. Mm-hmm. And that's why we get this bad taste in our mouth when books are adapted to film.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it as well is the actors. Obviously you've got Jack Nicholson there, and I think that's a very hard, because I think I have seen Christine, which was awful, but Jack Nicholson can play that character where he goes from fairly average and normal to totally insane. It's a very difficult thing to portray. Unlike when it's written in a book, you really can build that. And of course Kathy Burke and also Sissy Spacek. I think there's not a great deal of actors that can perform to that level.
Exactly, because these actors, they research the role. And researching the role is not just reading the script. The script is nothing compared to the novel itself. So a person that throws themselves into their characters will read the original text, will talk to the author and find out the author's motivation for creating a character, what the author feels about that character that they created. That's when you know that they're putting everything they got into portraying the role accurately.
Although I think sometimes it can be. It was Stanley Kubrick, wasn't it, that did The Shining?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I think some of it was a bit overly method acting, wasn't it? Because I do believe I can't remember her name, the one who played his wife. I think she genuinely.
It's on the tip of my tongue. I forgot the name, but I just call her Olive Oil because when I was a kid, she was Olive Oil on that terrible movie Pie Pie.
Yeah. But I do believe she genuinely had to endure some heavy therapy after filming that. I think she genuinely was terrified.
Exactly. I considered everything from the set to the location, how it was isolated. It was just them performing those scenes. There was no let's say thick arrival of extras everywhere. It was just them. And to portray their horror, they had plenty of time to portray that horror. It was just so crazy. I love the whole concept. It scared me to death. And especially the whole seer thing, the whole concept between being able to see the future and things like that. It was just really crazy to me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the movies that Stephen King, one of the movies that ended well, just like the book ended well, because some of Stephen King's work, it just doesn't end as well as it starts. It begins very strong, but then ends very tacky. And that's just an opinion of mine. So I hope his fans don't come kill me for it.
No, I did. He was the sort of horror author I started with, really, but I did move on. I think it was when he bought The Tower out, and I was a bit annoyed because I was a real devourer of books at that time. He serialised that, and they were tiny, and they were the size that I'd read in about a day. So I was a bit upset about that, and that's when I moved on to, I believe Dean Koontz, he's one of your favourites, isn't he? I'm a big fan.
My favorite. He's very versatile, even from the concept of him. He was, in between jobs at one time, but he wanted to write. He knew he wanted to write. He knew he was a great storyteller. And his wife said, and his wife, I forgot what she did, but she must have made some money, because she got a chance to support him. She said, I'm going to give you 5 years. If you don't make anything of your writing in 5 years, let's just call it quits. He said, okay. That was their agreement. A loving couple, that was their agreement. And he kicked butt and took names. And he is where he is today. And that's based on the support of his
Yeah.
And just like Stephen King's history, I know his background where Tabitha King, she was in school working on whatever career she was working on, and he was, teaching a little bit here and there, doing odd jobs. But could you believe that, right before he wrote, while he was writing Carrie, him and Tabitha were living off of her financial aid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's quite interesting you say that, actually, because they're like the strong female characters in the stories.
Art imitates life.
Yeah.
It is a very powerful concept. I love it. I fuse all my work into it. I bring all my work into my life comes into everything I do. Everything I do, from cooking, it's present in my work somewhere. My love of horror a while back I bring all of it. I bring all of it to the table when I'm writing. My musings, the way I look at life.